Hey everyone, good morning. Is anyone in here yet? It's still showing 0 on my end. Before I start talking here. I don't know why it's still showing no one. Okay, anyway, I don't know if there's anyone in here yet, but 1:19 p.m. is very important, especially for range. It's linked to, you see like these volatility sticks that we had around like 115, 116, 117. This period here at 10:15, 10:14, 10:16. They're linked to this period here. Okay, so between like that 118, 119, 120 window. So I just want to see if they at least come back with some sort of relative strength to take out 74.39, 74.38, 75. These were some reduction periods that we had around 12:08 and specifically here at 11:52 because that was a flip that I had and that was one of the earliest odds to come back and try taking out this means area, like basically back over 5-1. I wanted us to digest this afternoon anyway, so I'm okay with them taking it back down after taking out the channel right away, because I feel like if they kept going, that would have caused a lot of volatility. So like the channel and 2-6 being taken out in like 2 single sticks and then tagging 5-4, I just feel like that was probably a little too volatile for my liking. So digestion this afternoon, I think, was the move. And here I just want to see if they're gonna take out these specific ranges, especially off that 118, 19, 20. I don't have all of them marked. I'm trying to keep the chart a little bit clean, but it's this period here. Because if they do, then we have odds for continuation. There's quite a few durations in here. The most important period today, though, is between the hour of basically 2:15 till around 3:15, this period here. So I feel like at the very least during these 2-minute intervals, we probably want to at least get back over 3.8. Otherwise, they could just keep this delayed all the way till that 2:15 period. Tesla I held overnight from yesterday off this range. This one it did pretty good and then it kind of stalled, came back. But it looks like it's coming back to retest. My thoughts on Tesla were it could get back to that 417, maybe that 419. I don't know if it can push all the way to 423, but I figured maybe it can get to this range in here today. If market starts acting more constructive. Banks I mentioned last week as something that you could start looking at positioning into. They're starting to shape up a little bit better now. Some of them haven't fully moved yet, but this one's flagging on the daily. JPM had a pretty decent engulfing structure today too. They haven't really moved, so I feel like this could be like the next sector that could start rotating. With stalls at 3.8 around this time, I would say that they're likely delaying. This was another window here, so it's not the worst case, I guess, if they stall, but just keep in mind that if they don't break during this window here, that they could delay for another hour. If that's the case, then I'll end the stream and I'll probably come back on later this afternoon. Because within 11 to 12 minutes is not bad, but I feel like waiting from here all the way till here, like another 40, 48, 52 minutes. That's, which, can we do that when we're stuck in a channel? This was the exact area that I said we'd be coming back into pre-NVIDIA earnings release. I think these were them. Yeah, 6, 7 minute, 11 minutes are good too. Because the 6, 7 minute charts were, they were linked to lows and highs. There we go. That's better traction this time and right ahead of this 330 or 130, 133 window. Because if we didn't break during this period here, then we could basically stay stuck. So this is kind of the cutoff I had between here and here, essentially, to try coming back. We don't even have to retest highs here, but at least get back in the channel. Otherwise, we could stay stuck for a little bit. Because this is a pretty wide window. Tesla getting a high day retest here too. So we can probably watch the same windows on Tesla. I didn't time Tesla today, but we'll watch the 130, 133 window here too. Why is it so quiet in here? Okay. Some of the mid frames are, what did we say they were? They were the 20, hold on. Some of the mid frames that you could track are, oh, like the 28 minute, 37 minutes, like these ones here, 23, 45. These are like some mid frames. Oh, hi Smos. So, I mean, you could use these ones if you want, since they're, like, this one actually would do a good job, I guess, of, like, including, like, the 108 to 136 period, which I don't have marked, and then some of, like, the earlier periods around 204, but this is if you kind of want to track, like, those mid frames, kind of, like, in between. I'm kind of tracking wider frames today, just because I feel like we don't really have to track, like, everything in between, but, I mean, if you want to, obviously you can. I like the 23 minute though, because this is a really good negation pattern. And this is the one that flips at 133. So this does a good job of showing that overhead here. I like that 23 minute. I didn't really look at structures today, but this one would look good. This one aligns with the one that I had that was timing. Like, this is nice, because this can basically show the area that we have to clear by that 132, 133 window, which is probably in this range in here. Otherwise, it could stay stuck, essentially. Or, like basically if it comes back within, like, this range. As long as it stays above here, which is that 3738, then it's fine. So this does a really good visual job of what I was explaining that I'd want it to do. Okay, and then there's obviously another window here at 36. So I think that one just kind of shows you visually what we'd be looking for. So we don't want to come back beneath 37 here, especially at like 132. Because if we did, then we'll probably delay. Does that make sense? Because they would be taking it back to this shitty box range. Okay. think that's a good visual way of looking at this. Does that make sense? So probably want to at least stay above there. It doesn't necessarily have to get the full range break, but at least above that 3738. That's why I was being very modest with my targets. Okay, so it's good that they at least got it up there before then. But that's why I think if they had started clearing closer to that 110, 114, they would have likely pushed a little bit sooner. See if they negate between 133, 136. Let me actually see what some of these smaller time frames look like, because I haven't actually looked at them. Oops. I would imagine probably over like a 17, 18 minute. Yeah, like 18 is flagging a little bit. I just mainly want to see the ones that form some sort of negation pattern. Okay, the 25 minutes a good one. This is another one that we can kind of watch. What was happening? Tesla's crossing. So do you see what I mean? Like them keeping it around this, like the fact that, do you see that this is insane, you guys? Remember how I always say it's not about the price, it's about, or it's not about the pattern, it's about the price that it's forming at. Like the fact that this midpoint is right between 3.5 and 3.8, which are our calculated ranges, is insane. Okay, like it forming around these spots here is crazy. So that's exactly what I mean when I say like I don't really care about the patterns that form. It's more about like the price that they're forming at. This is a really good example of that. So like this being the mid supply zone basically. So they're still closing above 3.8, which is good, but obviously not taking out the full range. So that could keep it stuck a little bit longer. Let's see if there's any other structures that there might be some maybe off like a 32. Like a lot of these ones already started to fully negate. When does this one flip over? 4.8. So a lot of these are extended till, this one's not bad. This one's also not bad. This is like those extended ones though. I want to see if there's any smaller flags that started forming. This is another one that's not bad too. This would have to negate. Okay, so let me just see, because there's probably some flags that form, but maybe just over an hour. So like this one here. And 10:15 is when they initially started breaking up, and then they hit those highs at 11, 16, 17. Okay, so like this 65 minutes, another good example, but you see how it didn't break that mid bar right here or close above there. These are really, really good structures to kind of just watch to see how things start to progress. Okay, these are for like progressive examples, okay, especially off like the 10:15 timing. 130, this runs till 2:35, so we can likely extend a tiny bit. Maybe I would imagine that those are over 70 minutes, but we'll check. Probably like a 77 or 78 or something. Okay, 74. See, this isn't, I was already using the 74 minute. This is the one that flips at. So my 74 minute was really clean because it was linked to the high stall. Okay, so this is one of my first one, my favorite time frame today. So this one had the better odds of actually getting the structure break. Does that make sense? By this period here. So like by that 142 to 144. Okay, so that one has better odds. And I didn't really look too much above and beyond, but most of these are linked till later, like I said earlier, like after 2. This was linked to those earlier lows at 936. 80 minutes, not bad. Timing wise, it doesn't really have any significance, but the structure is very clean because you see how leveled it is. Like, this is a very clean structure. So this one, this could just be a generic flag pattern that you could use that's really good for like odds, because this runs until 2. So but it's because it's a very clean structure. Okay, so this is just more of like a not great. This one's not great for timing purposes, but for structural purposes because it's balanced. Okay. 81 is also really clean too. This aligns nice with that low off that 1012. This runs till 215. See, these are some nicer looking structures. But I'm mainly using the ones I sent earlier. But I just wanted to go over these with you guys, just so you can see which ones. This one's not bad too, because it's also aligned with that earlier high or low. So this one you can see just by like the wicks, so that could imply maybe volatility around like 150, just from like a quick read at that. This is a really nice structure, again, also after 2. Like most of the really nice balanced structures are after 2 p.m. Okay, so same with the 88 minute, like this is 232. These are all later in the session. Okay, anyway, I think you guys get the idea. But and then these are some of the wider structures that I was looking at. This one's linked to opening range. You can see a lot of these like run pretty late. This one has a really good structure from like that earlier stall. Okay, and this one is durational till 301. Oh, does that help you guys understand some of the structures a little bit better? Because I do think that that's important. Tesla getting that break and then kind of stalled here. It did tag off 3.6, so 415, 01. That's like the first major overhead I had on that thing. Okay, and let's go back to ES. Don't tell me it's not going to reset our charts. There we go. Hopefully it didn't delete any of the timestamps here. Okay, so I would say that conditions for this period were met, so I'm going to just delete them because they did get back over that 3839. These were some of those patterns that I mentioned I liked for those continued structure breaks here. I'm just going to mark them just for structural purposes. Okay, just to see where they're at. That one that flips at 44, at 144, that was the 32-minute, right? Yes. The 32, and that one I wanted to see if they would negate, basically, this range in here. And 32 and 37, I think. And that's also the 74-minute that flips at that time too. So, and this is one of my favorite patterns. So I really want to see if they at least try, and not necessarily retesting the high, but at least retesting this structure here. Does that make sense? you guys? What time is it? Just to kind of see if they at least keep these odds in play. So this range in here, so it's that 4.6, 4.7 area, okay? So not necessarily the highs, but just to kind of see like how much longer they want to keep delaying this. Because if they continuously delay, they'll keep it stuck probably until that 2 p.m. period. I know that there's some odds in here that we just looked at. They're not the highest odds, but there were some around 148, 150, obviously 204. I didn't mark all of them, but you can if you want, I guess. These are kind of like the mid frames, these ones in here. So if this breaks, let's say after, like at 44, that doesn't count. That would still kind of be like a... And another way of looking at this too, guys, is you see like how this was aligned with the highs, but it's not really aligned with those lows. So 10.02, this was more around that 10.13, 10.11, okay? Around 10.02, they were kind of sitting right in between here. So something else that you could do is even just measure like the range in time, which is about 11 minutes, okay? And kind of like how long it took when they sold off right here. Do you see that? We could apply an 11-minute window from here just to see if there's maybe a delay or something like that. So yeah, see, like this is no longer valid because it didn't come take out this range. So that's why I think they start to extend, and they could keep it stuck. This is exactly how we could stay stuck. Does that make sense? Like in the zone or in the channel basically. And sometimes they do that too if they're waiting for a catalyst. What catalyst do we have this afternoon? What do we have happening this afternoon, you guys? Yeah, which I always say, like, Fed minutes is not really a big catalyst in my opinion. Like, I feel like it's always relative to the price that we're trading at beforehand, so, and like the timing aspects of it. So in today's case, obviously this is a pretty big area, especially because we have NVIDIA earnings after the bell. But also because of the range that we're trading in, okay, and the fact that we have like multiple flag breaks and these being our calculated price points in here, okay, specifically this area here. But do you understand the concept of how they just delayed this, just even based off looking at that structure? So they did tag 4.6. So what they're doing at these points in time is they are meeting price. So like even back here, they tagged 3839, okay, around that period here. They broke it up before our 130, 136, okay, which was valid, but they didn't close above. Do you see this? Like back in here, then they brought it back at the 33, 35, 36. This was the 3.6 flip. They tested 4.6, but there's no close above, okay? Does that make sense? And then back in here, they couldn't get it over 4.3. And that's where this had to close at a minimum to keep like that pattern valid and not delay, okay, until this period here. I had highest odds after 2 anyway of getting out of the channel, so like the biggest period of the day is this area that I highlighted in purple. So it's like they're hitting just enough upside, but they're not closing high enough to keep those, but they're still sustaining high enough. Like they did a really good job of sustaining 3.8 back here. Okay, whether they test back beneath 3.8 at this point is not really a big deal. It was just more so before these structures closed that it was a big deal if they closed beneath, okay, or came back beneath, because then we also had some patterns that could start forming some bear flags too. What were they on? I mean, even this, technically. Even that. This is not bad if they bring it back up, but again, a lot of these are super late. These all technically could become bear-like patterns if they don't start breaking, but for the most part, they did break up a lot of structures. Like this here already broke up and negated. Do you see that? This already broke up and negated. That's why I'm saying after 136, 140, it's not a huge deal because there isn't as many structures that look like that now. Does that make sense? So if they bring it back down after this period, then it's okay, but that just means that likely more delays in this channel. There was a period at 150, 151 that I mentioned earlier. This was interesting because it wasn't really a nice looking pattern. I think it was the 80, this one, the 85 minute. But I like that it's linked to that earlier low, okay? But also like this kind of wick-like structure implies that maybe we could see similar type of price action, okay, around this time. So I think it's worth at least just watching to see maybe they like try wicking back up over these ranges in here or something, like back over like 4-1, 4-3. These points in the day though don't really have like super high odds. So okay, I'm gonna make some coffee and breakfast, and then I want to be back before 2, so I'll leave the screen on, but I'll be back in like 5-10 minutes. Hey everyone, sorry. I think it just started raining. Can you hear rain outside? This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Like if they stay stuck specifically during this frame, probably gonna stay stuck all the way till this period here. So far, I was right. Unfortunately. And we could actually stay here all afternoon if they want to wait till until earnings, to be honest. But we did have some odds that open up a little bit more. Alright, are you guys okay if I delete these? We did have some odds that open up a little bit more. Oh, that's good that they retraced over 3 during 204 though. And then again here at 215. So we had some odds that start opening up close to this period, but like around 220, 224. But the most important period I would say was the area that I highlighted in purple. And there's lots of odds after the bell today. That's another reason why I figured if they keep it stuck, then it does make sense. But we'll see. Almost everything is kind of stuck right now. Apple's actually pretty close to retesting high of day though. I did notice XOM picking up a little bit from these levels here, which I think is worth mentioning because the 157 is such a big spot. Okay. So far they're still stuck. Are you guys okay if I just mute myself? Because we could stay stuck for a while, like I was saying before. Like especially if they didn't clear during this period here. They did meet the conditions, which is enough to keep it extended, but like I was saying before, it could keep us stuck for another hour up to an hour and a half, which is, it's not the worst thing, but that could put the zone back in play. So if they want to keep the zone to channel bound, it could recycle back down to these ranges here. And they did something very strategic this afternoon. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but do you see how they left room down to 20? Do you guys see that? I don't know if you guys noticed that, but they left a little bit of room, okay? So it is something I'm keeping in mind just in case they decide they want to bring range back down. Just to bring it back up, there is that room to our 74.20, 74.21. $224 was one of my afternoon flips, so you can clearly see that they're starting to reduce range a little bit now. Because 4.5 points would have retested 4.4. I'm just going to clean it up though, so that I'm trying to keep my chart relatively clean, which don't even look at the day before because it looks crazy. But I'll go back and clean that up later. Usually on days like this, I actually don't even really measure too much, especially for stuck channel zone bound, but because I knew that these would be the ranges. But the interesting thing right now is we know our overhead is this 7.6 area, right? Like this area in here, 7.6, 7.9. You can say roughly around 22, 24 points, okay? From both upside and downside, because you see where they held here. I don't know if you guys can see this. It might be hard to see. Okay, you see how they kind of left room on both sides from like where they opened. So what's the best way I can explain this? From where they stalled, especially off our 5475. Okay, where they held, we still have room to our 20. And then where we opened at 9.5, which is very calculated, is this area here. Okay. I don't know why that's... Anyway, you guys get the point. I'm trying to mark the 10 and 11. And then the big overheads up here are around... I mean, 71 is an overhead, but I feel like we have to break closer to 77, 79, 81 to see some real structure breaks. And then obviously 8.8 and then that 9.5, okay? So, and same thing with downside. So do you see what they did here? Like on these breaks? Let's just go with a 22 point ratio first. Okay, do you see how they're kind of keeping it stuck in between? The actual range is around 23.5, so I mean we could use that, okay? Let me know if you guys understand this concept. So this is kind of like the range that needs to break up, okay? Above highs is closer to this area in here, like 7, 8, 7, 9. And then that's what gives some risk beneath, basically back to OR. Do you see that? And specifically if they fail this range in here, like an off our 20, 21 area, okay? Does that make sense? And then obviously the bigger risk would be if they failed back beneath here, because then that's what would take us back to retest our real-time lows, which are these 70s. Let me know if this makes sense to you guys. I feel like to me this is pretty straightforward, okay? Because I know that this is where our overhead is. And I know that this is where support is, so we're kind of just stuck within this range here. And if they fully extend 33, 34 points, let's just go with 34. Okay, 34, 34. This should be around the 90. 34 off 21 would be around 8.8, 8.6, which is our weekly opening ranges. Okay, 34 points beneath here is what would take us back to our weekly lows. Let me know if this makes sense to you guys, please, because these are the intervals that they're working around. And I noticed 23.5 point intervals even last week. Okay, but I'm just trying to show you guys how this would come into play. Okay, so 34 from here is around that 80, 82. If they actually fully broke range, it's around the 92, which is exactly what we need to get back in the zone. And then if they were to give us like an expansion scenario today, that's how we would get our 75 20s. Okay, does this make sense? So this is how it's linked back to weekly lows. Opening range, basically the balance zone. This area is, even though it's bullish, it's still kind of neutral because you have odds of both ends triggering here. Okay, I feel like this is the easiest way to kind of look at this. So 34 points from here should be around that 5.4. Isn't that cool? So these are the ratios we're working with, okay? Let me know if that makes sense. Obviously, if we extended 44 points, that would be the only way we would get back into another channel. Like a 44-point range extension is, I don't know if we would do that today, but that would be the only way that they would really extend this. I didn't really see that happening in real time, at least, but maybe after hours, I guess, with NVIDIA. The 44-point extensions, I'm pretty sure, are what would take this back to those 73 40s and 73 30s. Okay, do you see this? So that would automatically be linked to real-time lows, which would automatically be linked back to those previous week's lows around 7335 44. A stall around 6.8, and then what could essentially get us to those 50s. Okay, so let me know if this makes sense too, because this is another very important concept, because this is, there's some mid-range, like remember how 7512 was important? Same with this area in here. I'm gonna just delete these in between so you guys can see. But this was another wider range concept, okay, if they basically hold off these ranges in here. Let me know if this makes sense. So this is how you would get your 50s, okay? And if we want to measure off of our calculated spot, like off of 20.5 instead of like where they actually held, and then off of here and off of here, it should give you around that 5.2. Okay, and then this would give you closer to like this 7.5, 7.6, which I think is where they held. Yeah, it is, and then that would give you 3.2. They're pretty similar in ranges, but it's just to give you guys an idea of like how these areas would come into play, okay? And there are exact ranges on my graphic for the week. Do you all understand this? And we can even measure off of opening range just to kind of see like where we started. So we did open at 9.5, which is that balance zone that I was talking about. So real time open this morning was 7.395. Let's see, when they initially broke, this was, oh yeah, see, look, this was a 23.5 point break. So that makes sense, because that's the exact ranges that they're currently stalling in that we talked about. Look. Do you see that? Especially from this afternoon. So that 23.5 I think works as a starting base, because again, if they break that, that's what would get us the break to 8.178. Okay, so that first range was definitely accurate. On a 34 point break, I think that's like probably the break above this 2.7, so around 32, 33 points. Or you can even go with 29.5. It seems like they're stalling, which also makes sense, because do you see from an open close ratio, they haven't really broken 29.5 point intervals yet, hence they're kind of stuck. Do you see this? And then off of opening range, based on where they initially stalled, same sort of idea. So breaking a 34 point range off open is basically sustainments above 2.9. So once we start holding off of 2.9, we should start basing better. That'll give us higher odds of actually clearing 34 points above here. Does that make sense? Once you start basing off of the 2.931 area. And then lastly, that 44 point range is right around here. So same thing, once we start basing off 3839, we should have better odds of clearing this range, which would clear highs. Okay. We're basically stalling a 63-point ratio, so we can assume 66, 68-point breaks would give us these kind of extensions. These are probably the 88-point breaks here. Yeah, they are. And then these are probably our core ratios. 107. Yes, they are. 110, 115. Do you see what I'm saying? You guys, I'm trying to show you another way of looking at this. Okay, from a core perspective. Off open. So then a max range perspective would be maybe that 128, 132 points, which would take us back to last week's closing ranges, the 75, 23, 22. Okay. Does that make sense? That would take us back to these previous closing points. Do you see that? From where they actually opened the real-time session today. Look. All 495. That's linked to 128, 132 points. 132, 33 takes you back to your highs from Friday. I didn't measure this, but I would imagine that you would need at least a 150-point break there. Okay, and then off of session open, 151. So that makes sense. That's the midpoint of 256 and 346. So then 128 points, yeah, is right around these neutral spots, okay? Like 75.08, 75.12, 75.10, which is a huge overhead. Off lows, these are the 151-point ratios. Okay, so this is probably the 173. High to low is 172 points, so that is half of that 346. So that's very interesting. This is probably also, yeah, it is 173 points off today's open is 75.50. So that's a really interesting way of looking at that. Okay, 173 points is and then 178, like, or 173 off of lows is 75.29. And you have to remember too that these areas have consistently been in play. I said before, you can use the 346-point ratios if you want. Like, some people use them and some didn't, but if you did, that's fine, as long as you understand like the ranges. It was closer to like 342, 343 if we use the actual ranges that occurred off the lows. Or off these candles open close. Okay. I also said you could just measure off of, you could measure off of the 15, 16, but like I was saying before, if you measure exact ratios, do you see how it's linked to this in here? It was closer to like 342, 343. But you get the idea there from that low. Okay, versus here, or you could do the 356. But I just want to show you guys how these areas are basically correlated. Okay, do you see the 355, 356 off these lows? I've been using core ratios, but obviously you guys can use whatever you want. These are on the report too, but that's why I was saying they're kind of linked back to like the 16th, 15th. Okay. So if you wanted, you could just measure off the 15th, 16th. You see how like they're back around these open close ratios here. Do you see this? 346, 354, 356. Hence, like them basically holding above here today is the same thing as them holding a 356 point ratio above these areas in here. Okay, so that's why this area is calculated. We already talked about that, but okay. So them holding above here is the same thing as them holding 346 points above our April 16th highs. Does that make sense? So this hold right here, that's also a 346 point hold. Okay? Off the close, sorry, not highs. So that's why they need to start building better structural bases closer to the 3.5. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? This area here. So now they're starting to base a bit better here. And then off the 356, 357 is where they're currently getting stuck. Does that make sense, you guys? So these are all very calculated ranges in here. And I think once they come and clear, that's where we could see like the breaks back into the 17th, which are obviously those much bigger ranges. And like I was saying, I'm working more with like core ratios, but whatever way makes this easier for you guys. So, and then half of 346 is these 172, 173 point ranges. Okay, we have those very important times coming up here. Just be a bit cautious, guys, because this is where things I would think could get volatile. They're already starting to like break down range. Some bigger sticks here ahead of that 248. If the window is 248, 251, 256, 258, 305, this is the most important time frame for the session today. Okay? something I did notice here is, remember back in here, like after 1:30, then they didn't clear, but then they brought it back around 1:36. They're doing the same thing here, like they kind of stalled at 2:33, but then brought it back up a few minutes later, only to bring it back down. So they basically recycled range just ahead of this very important interval here by 12 points. 12 points is, I think, back to highs. Yeah, it is. So I don't know if you guys see that. They basically prevented highs from triggering, okay, ahead of these times. So they're being very, very strategic about how much range they're moving this in. So first condition is obviously we want to see if this can get back over 743.879, 743.75, 743.9.50. These areas in here. What do you guys think? Let's do a poll. Clear high a day before 3 p.m. I'll set that for 3 minutes. Can you guys vote as quickly as you can though, just because these times are very important. Okay, so first condition met, 74.38, 75, 74.39 retraced, and right on time off 248. I would say second condition is going to be to get back over this 4175.42 by this 250, 251 window. 56 was my most important time today, so I'm going to closely monitor around 254, 255, okay? This is my most important flip today, this one here. Let's maybe mark this in, I don't know, what color should we mark this in? Green. Tesla trying to make a bit of a turnaround. What? Oh. So the issue, if they don't break during these times, is they can keep this stuck until after the close. There's a lot of odds today around like 412, 415, 421, 422, 440. Okay, so that makes sense also with NVIDIA reporting after the bell. If they want to just keep this stuck channel bound, that's why I said earlier you could roll calls into tomorrow's expiration. That's what I did down here. There was a window at 305, but these points in time were a little bit more calculated during this period here. At least to see if they can, at the very, very least, retest like 48, 49, like the top of the channel. Because I feel like if they don't even test the top of the channel during this hour, then we're for sure going to stay stuck. What do the YouTube people think? What do you guys think? You think that they can... I don't know if they can clear highs before 3, but do you think they could at least retest 7448, 7449? 0.50? Tesla is holding up a lot better than ES. Like it's moving right off these intervals. So 415.01 is the spot for Tesla to break, and then 416. Are you trading that one too? Can't remember who in the chat was also looking at it or trading it. Oh, nice. Mine expired today, so I need to figure out what I'm going to do with these. I have the 410 strike that I bought yesterday, but I mean, they held up pretty good. I did cover some earlier, like off the open, but I left 3 contracts just in case they break these ranges. Maybe I'll have to look at buying further out, because these are the areas that can push it back to 423, 427, 430. Okay, let's see. Yes, is going to get some structure breaks here if they're going to keep us stuck until after the close. Which would be really, really boring. If they keep us stuck, then I'm probably going to end the stream, you guys. There was a window around 321 too, but I really don't want to sit here stuck in the channel. Plus, my sister has an appointment, so I guess I'll go pick her up. These points were the most important for me this period here, so I feel like if they don't at least try clearing the channel during this period, or at least trying to test upper channel during this period, then we're gonna for sure stay stuck this afternoon. So let's see. This was part of my weekly plan anyway, was to get back into the zone and channel for NVIDIA earnings. So them keeping us here is honestly pretty expected. That's a little bit better movement here now on that stick. We'll see if they have a better clearance over 4142. And specifically off this window here. Do we have any catalysts at 3? So far it's looking pretty stuck. I didn't think we had any catalyst. I think 258 is at 74 minute, which remember how we said earlier they didn't end up breaking structure, so it wasn't really valid anymore. I would say that, like, at the very least, if they want to try keeping some of this active, then you'd want to at least try. And this is partially why I figured these odds decreased at this period, because of how they decreased around this period here, back around like that 144 period when they stalled. Do you see that? So same sort of idea here, but flagging it would probably be the better case. But again, that's going to delay us till after the close, unfortunately. But the good thing is it's at 4:12, so at least it would count like those first 14 minutes after the bell, but it is mostly after the close. And then obviously there's multiple flips for 3 o'clock, but what's the midpoint between here and 4:12? Because those could be our end of day odds. I didn't measure any of those manually because I just figured if they keep it stuck around these points that we're probably just going to stay stuck. But I mean, I guess we could technically have some sort of price movement here, maybe around maybe around like imbalance prints, so like 36, 37 minutes, around like that 335, 336 period, like from here. So a lot of these are for later in the session. 256 was the 314 minute, okay, which is linked to lows, just as an FYI. And then this is linked to lows, which flips at 3. This is why there's a potential delay window here, but they're keeping it pretty stuck beneath 4.2. I think this is going to stay stuck in the channel. Okay, I think I'm going to sign off too then, since they kept it stuck during this period. There's still some odds that they can break around 305, 321, and right in between like imbalance prints. Obviously they can start pushing into end of day, but I feel like they're trying to keep this stuck until NVIDIA reports earnings, kind of like what we discussed earlier. And there were a lot of odds after the bell. So I'm going to shut off the stream, I think, because I have a few things that I want to do. And I'll be back for end of session. Just kind of keep a close eye, because there's still some odds here. I feel like at the very least, even if they don't get it out of the channel, I would like to at least see them test these areas here, okay? Like, especially around like 305, 321. Like, this 3 o'clock stick is linked to low of day. So, I mean, them getting at least a break over 4.2, 4.4 is good. And then maybe these could be the odds of retesting, but the only issue is they could retest here and then bring it back to here. I was really hoping today, though, that they would get it out of the channel and actually get it back to these core ranges before NVIDIA reports, like these areas. I was really wanting them to get to the 7.7, 7.8, but to try bringing it maybe back into this zone here, but it's fine if they keep it stuck. It's not really the worst case scenario. And don't forget that 7454 is linked to 7520s and 7570s, okay? This area here is extremely calculated. So, oh, they're going to move it now because I said I was going to sign off. Well, maybe the 305 window is going to be a bit better. This looks way more progressive this time. But I still think we need at least 4.8. I feel like anything beneath that, they'll probably just keep this stuck. Okay, I'm gonna shower and get dressed, and I'll be back. They could try pushing 7448 here, guys. There is still that window at 305, and then there's a midpoint around 320, 321, and then the calculated midpoints are 335, 336 p.m. These are linked to 4:12 p.m., which was some of the after-hour odds for moving. Excuse me. Okay, let me shower quickly, and then I'll see if I can capture maybe the close. Otherwise, I'll be back maybe towards like the last 10-15 minutes of the